In 1953, Disney released the Mickey Mouse short The Simple Things. This short is significant in that it was the last Mickey Mouse cartoon made in Walt Disney's lifetime. Although Mickey would continue to be a pop culture icon, his film career sadly remained in limbo for 30 years. Then on December 16, 1983, he made his big comeback playing Bob Cratchit in Mickey's Christmas Carol. Although Mickey's name is in the title, the real star is Scrooge McDuck, who plays, well, Scrooge. He is just as nasty as his namesake, if not worse. For starters, he states that Marley left him enough money for his tombstone, but he had him buried at sea. Wow! The 1951 version showed Scrooge apathetic about Marley dying, but at least he gave him a burial. Same with the 1969 version. Scrooge may have spent as little money as possible, but he still spent something for a burial. This Scrooge just took the money and had Marley buried at sea. It's also interesting that he X'd out Marley's name instead of buying a new sign, or just leaving it alone, like he does in most adaptions. In most adaptions, as well as the original book, Scrooge gave Cratchit the whole day off with pay. This version of Scrooge gave Cratchit half a day off without pay. If there was a prize for the cheapest Scrooge, this one would win it. He also had the most creative way of saying no to the charity collectors, played by Rat and Mole, I've ever heard. Scrooge basically told them that they'd be out of a job if they gave money to the poor because they wouldn't be poor anymore, ignoring the fact that the poor will always exist. The big turning point for Scrooge in the Christmas Carol is when Belle, or Isabel as she's called here, breaks off their engagement. Here, it is Scrooge who breaks off their engagement. Why? Because she was late on her last payment of the honeymoon college, so he foreclosed. In some ways, making Scrooge the one who breaks off the engagement is a little more powerful. It shows us what a jerk he's become, since he is willing to foreclose on the woman he was going to marry. That doesn't mean that this Scrooge doesn't have heart. He shows remorse over the way he treated Isabel. He felt the Cratchits should have more food than they got. And he felt bad when Tiny Tim died. Also, he was extremely generous with his donation to the charity collectors. He even put some money down Molly's pants. I love that part. I always thought it was funny how after Scrooge's redemption, he just puts on his coat, hat, and scarf over his PJs. Once you think he's actually going to get dressed, he just grabs his cane and considers himself fully dressed. Mr. Magoo did something similar to this, but eventually he got dressed. Scrooge McDuck never did. What most people don't know about Mickey's Christmas Carol was that originally it was a record from 1974. The record is mostly what you see in the cartoon, only some of the cast is different. For instance, Merlin was the ghost of Christmas Past instead of Jiminy Cricket. The ghost of Christmas Future was the queen from Snow White instead of Pete. And Honest John and Gideon from Pinocchio were the charity collectors instead of Rat and Mole. I say that last change was for the best, because who would actually believe that Honest John and Gideon would give the money to charity? As I've mentioned in other videos, Mickey's Christmas Carol marks the debut of Alan Young as Scrooge, who also served as a co-writer of the story. It also was sadly the last time Clarence Nash provided the voice of Donald. Mickey's Christmas Carol was my first introduction of A Christmas Carol, and it has remained one of my favorites. The animation is amazing. The voice acting wonderful. It's fun to try to catch each character's cameo. And then there's the opening song, Oh What a Merry Christmas Day. How come they never play that on the radio? Richard Williams' A Christmas Carol may have been a more faithful adaptation of the book, but its half-hour format caused the story to feel rushed at times. Mickey's Christmas Carol doesn't try to remain faithful to the book. It covers the basic elements of the book, then allows the Disney characters to tell the story in their own way, thus giving us a half-hour cartoon that effectively tells the story of A Christmas Carol without feeling rushed. Famed critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert weren't too pleased with Mickey's Christmas Carol. Their complaints were that it didn't emphasize Mickey's character and that it failed to live up to the classic cartoons. Were they expecting Mickey to be cast as Scrooge? Bob Cratchit was the perfect role for him because Mickey is an all-round good guy. Scrooge McDuck, on the other hand, has the name Scrooge. It's a no-brainer on who should be in that role. As for not being able to live up to the classic cartoons, I say it's become a classic in its own right, thus proving that critics are not always right.